Hello, Film Independent members, and welcome to this Film Independent Presents Q&A for the Oscar shortlisted documentary short Camp Confidential, America's Secret Nazis.
The first memory I have is when we were told we were going to be taken to 1142. It was not a very military camp.
Here you have no rank, no titles. You can't tell anybody what you do. This was a secret operation.
It took a few weeks to be told Nazis were going to be there.
As a Jewish refugee from Europe, that's just about as bizarre an assignment as you could get.
Rocket scientists who were essential to the Nazi war effort now becoming essential to our war effort.
I'm Jen Wilson, Senior Programmer with Film Independent. I want to say a special thank you to the HFPA and our sponsor, Vision Media, who hosts our Film Independent Presents virtual screening room. And now please welcome today's guests, writer, director, and producers of Camp Confidential, Daniel Sivan and Loushy.
Thank
you.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you for having us. We're thrilled.
Thank you for joining me today. That's extremely exciting news, being shortlisted for the Oscar short. Congratulations to you. Not many people make it there. Did you have to play the short in a qualifying festival for it to qualify to submit to the Oscars this year?
I'm not sure. I mean, we were screening at Doc NYC and the AFI, but we got here somehow.
Yeah. No, I mean, we were at Doc NYC shortlisted, which was, terrific. And we were so fortunate to have this small window between, everyone starting to get back and meet each other at Doc NYC and AFI. And now everything is back to virtual. So actually, we had screenings with audience, which, in the last 2 years is something that we really have to think about, that we had that opportunity of actually screening it in a really amazing 2 film festivals.
Right. I used to watch short films for the LA Film Festival, and we would get just our festival 3,000 submissions. So there's many thousands of short films made in a year, and it's a tough competition for this. So let's start with we're an organization with a lot of filmmaker members. So I like to start Q&As a lot of times with the question of what's your filmmaker origin story? So for each of you, how did you become a filmmaker? Maura, do you want to start?
Sure. So actually my journey started, sometimes I can't even believe that, since I was 15, I learned films in high school, and somehow, I was hooked immediately. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then I finished high school, and, I started working almost immediately. And then I went to film school here in Israel, in Jerusalem Film School, which is a great film school. And between, I think, my first year to my second year, I needed money to support my study, and I wanted to make money for the summer. And you remember back in the days when there was, digitizing like tapes that you had to digitize into the computer, and the digitizers would work from 8 p.m. until 8 a.m., because the editors used to work on the daytime. And so then I met Daniel. And we worked together every day since 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. And we fell in love. And I started working on a documentary film. And when I met him, so he already won like first prize, on like in this Israeli film festival. So I started working on a documentary, and he told me, why are you doing it through film school, just like quit film school. Let's use the tuition money to produce the film. I'll produce the film for you. I'll edit the film for you. And so I left film school. I moved in with Daniel, and we started making films together. And and our career began mostly with political films. Here, the situation in Israel is pretty, difficult. And for many, many years, we made political doc films. And, we were very fortunate that Censored Voices and also Diaries that we did together got into Sundance and, to the Berlinale. And so, so our career, almost, I think, since the first film we made, somehow, reached these amazing, places and stages. So, and it's been 25 years since. So I can't believe that I'm 40.
I didn't realize that story was also going to be a love story. That was amazing.
Oh, it's terrible.
Daniel, do you have a different viewpoint on that story, or would you say that?
Do you have a different viewpoint to that story? I want to hear that.
No, I started at my peak, and I'm just deteriorating every year because I started as an activist, and I would do these political docs, just like, do it yourself docs. And it was all activism and running around and getting shot at. And from year to year, it became more and more bourgeoisie, and it became like, okay, like, this demonstration, like we shot 1 million demonstrations. How about like we do something more interesting and maybe a bit more cinematic? And from year to year, I'm, leaving the activism and becoming more and more of a bourgeoisie filmmaker. Now we've reached our peak with like making animation, which is the most safe and comfortable way of not running in the trenches with a camera. So I always feel a bit ashamed that like I left the activism for others, and now we are making films. Now
we're still in the trenches. We're still in the trenches, and I think that every project has its challenges, and it's creative thinking. Every film brings some kind of worries, and
when you do animation, you don't get tear gassed like on a daily basis. You get annoyed.
It's true, but I think Camp Confidential was it was extremely important. And I think that in all of our filmmaking, and I disagree on what, because this story, I think, is very connected to our previous career. I think that we always are looking for subjects which are, censored, and subjects and voices of people that were silenced for many, many years. And I think, that this line of what we're looking for, these dark secrets in history of us as human society, are really, this is our passion. And I think that also Kept Confidential is pretty political film, if I may say, because, it has those elements that are, drove us to this project.
Yeah. So can we talk about the origins of Camp Confidential? What is it that led you to want to tell this particular story?
So we were wrapping up The Devil Next Door, which is a Netflix series about John Demjanjuk, which was this Nazi god from Cleveland. And it was a very tough documentary to make because it was really spending 2 years with Holocaust imagery and really terrible stories. And we were approached by Benji and Jono Bergman right at the end the producers that told us about this story. And our immediate reaction was, A, we can't cope with another story of that magnitude about the Holocaust. It's just such an emotional toll. And B, we just don't believe you. Like, you know, it sounded just like an urban legend about this camp in the middle of the war with Jews guarding Nazis. It sounded like some kind of sick joke. And once we started actually listening to the NPS recordings, and then when we met Arno and Peter, we just were shocked that like everything they pitched us was actually reality. And still, like, you know, watching it again and again, I still just can't believe that this happened, because it really sounds like a twisted joke.
Yeah, I mean, when they, especially, I remember, you know, when they approached us, they told us about the story of Werner von Braun taken by the, you know, Jewish refugees to the Landsberg brothers store, buying lingerie for their wives to send to Germany. And I couldn't believe it, because sometimes people imagine things when they want, you know, to pitch you projects. And I said to myself, I don't believe that the story is actually true. And when we heard it in all of the testimonies, you know, the story over and over. And then when we interviewed Arno and Peter, when we heard the story and we understood that it's true, and we understood the origin of it, you know, it was shocking. And it even, you know, it hurted. It's, you know, it's ironic, it's funny, but at the same time, it makes you feel so angry. And it makes you feel, you know, okay, something here went completely wrong. How could this even happen? And this relationship between the Jewish refugees and the Nazis, I think, you know, really, really interested us. What did they felt? You know, what was this journey for them? What was exactly the story? We wanted to hear more and more. So,
do you know if it was really interesting to me, you know, of course they wanted people that could speak German to, you know, interrogate the Nazis, but why in particular did they want Jewish people to be the jailers in this situation? Were all the jailers Jewish?
So the vast majority were Jewish. The real vast majority, I think there were like 3 people who weren't Jewish in the whole camp. And the answer is very simple. It was a war. Everybody was suspected. Everybody who knew German was suspected of being a Nazi. And the Jews were the people that were obviously not Nazis. So they were just picked up from the boot camp, and it was just, oh, you know German? Are you Jewish? Great, like we have a mission for you.
I don't think that they thought about it too much. They were just looking for people that knew fluent German, that could have, you know, done this job. And there was a community of Jewish refugees that arrived from Germany right when they were 16, 17. Most of them escaped, you know, like without their parents even. They were running away from this horrors in Germany, and they came there when they were teenagers and were drifted to the army 2 years later, 1 year later. So they were actually even still Germans. They most of them didn't even have American citizenship yet. They were enemy aliens. They were considered enemy aliens. And so I think that the army seized it of this opportunity of saying, oh, okay, these are real Germans. They can, you know, they can do this job. And I don't think that they thought about it too much, about the situation where, okay, these Jewish refugees, their families are murdered right at this moment in Germany, and they're supposed to treat those Nazis nicely. I don't think that they really thought it through, because if they did, this is heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a pretty shocking. As you said, you didn't believe that it existed, and I just felt the same thing watching it. Like, I can't believe that this really happened. and how shocking it must have been to these people who had fled Europe to get away from the Nazis, and now they would be spending, all their time with them. How long of a period of time was it that they were doing this with the camp?
The camp existed for 4 years, and it was different periods of time for each. And some stayed a few months, some stayed a whole year, some stayed a few weeks. And they really formed relationship with them. I mean, some of them even befriended them on some level. Many of them, the vast majority, were really sickened by them and tormented by them. And it's amazing, like, we keep talking to Peter, even today, he's 96 now, and he still, in every conversation, says it again and again. He says, like, if I would have been tasked with this today, I would have said no. I would have never done it today. And Peter went on and became a very, very influential and prominent civil rights lawyer, and really changed some anti-torture laws in the UN. And he says, if I wasn't a refugee, if I wasn't 18, I would say no. And he still feels the need to apologize and say, like, I am sorry for what I've done. And we are, like, very empathic, of course, and keep telling him, like, look, like, those were your orders. You had to follow them back then, but it's still haunting them.
Yeah, and the camp exists from 1942 to 1946. And I think that is, like, it's not only after the war, it's during the war. It's 4 years during the war, and then the camp was bulldozed. All the documents were burned, everything was bulldozed in 1946. I think that the US knew how problematic this camp was, how problematic, things that happened there was. And I think that they wanted to whitewash those crimes in order to allow Werner von Braun and the scientists to join NASA and to join, forces with the US for one mission, to get to the moon before the Soviet Union. And that's, makes you think about, interest that countries are taking decisions and, what are exactly the red lines as us, as human society, as to those decisions.
Yeah, I would say this documentary, because I had heard before, I think everybody's heard before, that there are Nazis here in the United States, and everybody sort of wondered how they got here, and sort of the idea that the United States might have harbored them. And I think this is really the first time, I'm seeing an actual explanation for that, and an actual acknowledgement of, we did bring them here, we did harbor them, we did bring their families, we did give them citizenship and good jobs. So yeah, it's completely understandable why the United States, but they succeeded in it taking a long time to uncover that.
And it's not only high jobs. I mean, what was, it's one of the people, that actually was on Apollo 11. The Kennedys embraced Werner von Braun. President after president, embraced him. You see in the archives at the end of the film how the US audience, clapping him and looking at him as a hero, as an American hero that reached Apollo 11.
By the way, like, one of the most obnoxious characters that, made his way through the camp was one of Hitler's chief chemists. And after the war, he was recruited and served on the board of all these pharmaceutical companies in the US. And he ended up inventing thalidomide, that terrible, terrible medicine that caused so much harm. And others were recruited by the CIA, of course, and by other corporations. And it was really, a very solid interest in saying like we have the national interest of the US becoming stronger and the enemy of our enemy is our friend. But what was for us at least like so disturbing is back when they were actually interrogating them, and you can see that in the first part of the film, is they did not interrogate them about what was Hitler's weapon, what kind of rifles did they use. They interrogated them most of all about, hey, like you fought on the Eastern Front. What do the Russians have? What kind of tanks does Stalin have? And it was really preparing the war against Russia very much during the Second World War, and they very, very, knowingly prepared themselves into the next war. And it wasn't just, winning against Hitler.
Yes, that was quite a revelation as well, that we were already in a competition with Russia to steal the most scientists from Germany. It's crazy. So talk about the animation in this. At what point did you decide that telling the story with animation was the best way to do it?
It was a very easy process that followed shouts and arguments and things hurled at each other in the house. I was like, wow, it's going to be amazing. It's animation. And Mo was like, I hate cartoons. I hate animation. I hate anything that is not like dead realistic, because she's really such an archive buff. And we really rely on archives in all of our films. And here we had no archives. And like one option was, okay, we're just gonna listen. But when we listen to these testimonies, it's lacking something, because they portray something so human, but it doesn't, come through the audio. And we really didn't want to work with actors and recreations, because we are talking about the Holocaust, and we didn't want any kind of Holocaust deniers popping out and saying, oh, they recreated it, so who knows? So for us, it was very clear that we needed some kind of solution. And yes, take it from here.
I mean, at the end of the day, of course, that he convinced me. But I think, that because we're a couple that is working together, so the dialogue is I think at the end of the day, the film really benefits from it, because it was pretty, even after we decided to go on animation. So it was very important for me, not to go on a childish animation, to go on a certain type of animation that would be like an adult animation that I wanted to see face. The animation was a tool that we can, express the feelings of the people, because even when we approached animation, we're still documentary people, and we wanted the emotion there. That was what was so important for us. And that's what we insisted all throughout the process, even, to go. And I think it was a part of this dialogue on exactly which style of animation to go that, will be able to really touch in a very deep way on how the characters felt, and to give the viewer this journey that even if you're like me, not a cartoon fan, you would still be very, very connected to it. And I think that it was the best decision for the film. It was. And also as an archive buff, also, when we move into the animation, after you see Werner von Braun in the animation, then you actually see the real archives and Werner von Braun sitting there in the room, looking, through the control room of Apollo 11, it feels like a punch in the stomach. That's exactly what we wanted, to gain. And that's exactly the question that we wanted to raise throughout the film. So I think this mix was a really, really successful mix for this film.
Yes, I do too. I feel like in the last couple of years, there's been a lot more documentary filmmakers using the form of animation in their film, and it's really interesting how you can tell a story in that way when you need to create something for an audience that doesn't necessarily already exist on film or that you would have to shoot. So let's the film's currently on streaming on Netflix, right?
Yes.
That's right.
At what point did you make a deal with Netflix to stream the movie?
So it was like right from the very start. I mean, we had this idea and we immediately emailed them and told them like, we have a wonderful short for you. And thank God, or thank Netflix for, I mean, hopping on board, because it's impossible to work with animation on a, independent budget. And it was amazing having their support. And also it was very clear for us from day one that we wanted to make it as a short format. We wanted it to be a real punch in the stomach and not to be dragged out into a episodic or into a long format, but just, this is a camp, these are the voices, this is what happened, and no experts, nothing but that. And in the past, like working with different broadcasters, there was no slot for this. I mean, people would tell us like, unless it's going to be a 90, it won't get into festivals and we won't get like a theatrical release. And it's just so beautiful that Netflix, brought back to life this format of these 40-minute films, which is fantastic, because like we were watching all of the shorts in the shortlist and we absolutely loved them. It was such a great experience.
I think that, first John and Benji approached us, and then immediately when we heard about the idea, we said, okay, they're 94. So the first step was hopping on a plane. We're living in LA, hopping on a plane to DC. We filmed them. And then we approached Netflix. I mean, we didn't want to waste time, we immediately did the interviews and then we immediately wrote Netflix an email and, please be on board. And it's so wonderful that they were our partners, because they were really, really great and terrific to work with and supporting this project. It was a fantastic journey, especially, with COVID years. 2 years to do animation was very a good experience.
I've been watching the Oscars since I was a kid, and the shorts, the shorts categories were notoriously, how do I say, not cared about that much. But I think it was because people really didn't have a way to view them. So it is fantastic, that they're being streamed now for a lot of people to actually get to see all the shorts in the shorts categories, because that format is completely amazing. I think the shorts format's completely amazing. It has not only helped filmmakers get their start in filmmaking, but some filmmakers continued to make films in that format. Do you think you will still continue to make films in a shorter format?
I think it depends on the project. I think it depends on what we want to do, or the hook. Actually, we had a very long career before we did this short of feature films and series. I mean, so this is the first time we actually made shorts, after 20 years in the industry. So, and it was such a wonderful experience. I mean, so, I think it depends on the story, on the project. And like Daniel said, the fact that now you have Netflix, brought back those shorts. So you can choose, you can really, really choose what's best for each project. What is the best outcome to reach the best film? Is it 40 minutes? Is it 90? Or is it 4 episodes? I think that each project comes with its own life decision. And yeah, I think that docs are, I mean, I would have made a different film than another filmmaker would have done, but the material talks. And usually the material and the footage and the story takes you to the place that, that they choose you and not otherwise.
Well, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this. Don't feel bad for loving archival. I do too. So we'll be archival nerds together.
Yeah, put me in an archive and just leave me there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Congratulations, and good luck to you at the Oscars.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks for having us.